everyone, and welcome to a special report of our CNN, or in other words, Really Cool News Network. We wanted to go with the name of CNN, but we don't want to be related to fake news, so this is the closest we can get, so there's that. But we do want to talk about something really important and kind of cool, and it deals with old people, Europe, and smelly teeth, and yellow teeth, mind you, and that's Brexit.
Before we explain what that's all about, we wanted to know what the students at Council Rock North thought it was. So we went around school asking random people so they knew what Brexit was about, and here's what we ended up with.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, what do you know about Brexit?
I don't know what that is.
What do you know about Brexit?
What?
What do you know about Brexit?
What is that?
As you've seen, some people might not be fully aware as to what Brexit's all about. So what is it then?
Brexit is simply the process of the UK leaving the European Union. The EU, according to BBC, is an economic and political union involving 28, yes, 28 folks, European countries, allowing free trade and free movement of people to live and work in whichever country they choose. Now, this basically means that some random guy in the Netherlands, if he really wants to, he can just choose to move in Norway, like the very next day. Like, that's totally legal. This is sort of like how states work here in the US.
But why does the UK want to leave the EU? There are many reasons as to why the UK wants to leave, but one major reason is simply because of economics. According to Bustle.com, the UK regularly sends money to Brussels, which is the headquarters of the EU, and that money gets redistributed to other countries in the EU. Those in favor of Brexit often argue that the UK should not pay Brussels any money, and as such should leave the EU because of it.
Another issue often overlooked by both ends of Brexit is in regards to immigration. Under EU laws, anyone who is a citizen of a country from the EU can move to the UK even without a work visa. While economists argue that this is sort of a good thing, many people in favor of Brexit actually argue that this immigration actually affects, greatly affects actually, things like welfare and the National Health Service. There's also the whole debate of identity, in which many people like to argue on whether or not the EU is ruining just the way Great Britain is often overlooked, according to foreigners like us. So, should the UK really leave the EU?
To answer that question, we need to take a step back to 2016.
Brexit is a little confusing as we're speaking. So here's the breakdown. Back in June of 2016, a public vote was made on whether or not the UK should leave the EU. Simple, right? And believe it or not, 52%, yes folks, 52% of voters agreed that the UK should leave. So that's it, right?
No. So here's what's happening. There's this old lady, her name's Theresa May, and she was the Prime Minister of the UK while this Brexit thing was happening. So in March of 2017, Theresa initiated Article 50. This article is meant to be the formal process of leaving the EU, and negotiations were meant to kick off. As such, Brexit was originally meant to leave by March of 2019, 2 years after Article 50 had been initiated.
However, Brexit had been delayed twice, and Parliament had rejected Theresa May's deal. Why, you might ask? Well, this is due to one problem: Conservatives and Democrats fighting over the backstop. Now, what is the backstop, you might ask? Well, it's simply meant to ensure that there will be, and I quote, no barriers or border posts between Northern Ireland, which is part of Great Britain and all, and also the Republic of Ireland after Brexit occurs, which, for context's sake, the Republic of Ireland is the country that everyone knows for short people and potatoes and famine. So there's that.
However, if the backstop were to be needed, the UK would be in close trading relationship with the EU and would avoid checks. This in turn made the Conservative Party angry, stating that having a close trading relationship with the EU could make the UK trapped in it for years, and would thus prevent the country from making trade deals with other countries.
Because of Parliament opposing the Brexit deal, Theresa May decided to resign. Yes, resign in March of this year. Because of this, the UK got a new Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, which instead of being some generic old lady, it's now some generic old guy, so yippee, yay, guys, or something. Anyways, Johnson wanted to create a new Brexit deal on October 17th, and he did just that. Due to time constraints, we can't actually go over every new change with this deal, but one thing that you should know for sure is that the backstop thing from before, that's completely gone. Like now it's been replaced with a new custom arrangement, and this arrangement would now involve tariffs between Northern Ireland and its home country of Great Britain.
By October 19th, Mr. Johnson had tried to talk to Parliament about his new deal, and they once again decided to postpone it. So what this means is that Mr. Johnson has to send a letter to the EU to ask for another Brexit delay. If approved, the Brexit deadline would be delayed until January 31st of 2020. On topic of all this, the government has now published the Brexit legislation, and on October 22nd, members of the Parliament had voted in favor of the second reading, which is the initial hurdle for any piece of law.
As of the time being, there are more events going on with Brexit as we're speaking, such as the fact that the Boris wants more conservative seats in Parliament in order to make the whole process of Brexit happen quicker. There's also the fact that, if the UK leaves the custom unions and the single market on October 31st, so that is today if, this video is playing by then the EU will start carrying out checks on British stuff, which may lead to delays at certain ports. Oh well. I mean, at the end of the day, though, Brexit is a confusing mess that started out so innocently, but has now resulted in so many things happening and so many delays happening that it's been more than 3 years since Brexit started. More events are to happen even after this news report comes out. But with that being said, that's Brexit for you.
Thank you for listening to our news report, and hopefully you've grasped even some information about the messy topic.